Good evening, feeble-minded Earthlings, and welcome to another episode of the Intergalactic Review. My name is Imperial Starbeast, and if you're receiving this transmission, it's because I've taken over your mind, and we are now interacting as one. Tonight I'd like to talk about Tank Girl. In the year 2033, after a decade-long global drought, in the wake of a comet striking the Earth and disrupting the rain cycle, the planet has become a desolate desert. Set in a drought-ravaged Australia where resources are scarce, Kesslee, played by McDowell, head of the powerful and evil Water and Power Corporation.
There's no law.
The de facto government has taken control of the water supply.
No mercy.
Unwilling to cower under Kesslee's tyrannical rule, a pair of outlaws known as Tank Girl, played by Lori Petty, and Jet Girl, played by Naomi Watts, rise up. Riding on a war tank, Tank Girl joins the mysterious, genetically modified super soldiers called the Rippers to fight against the tyranny and destroy the corrupt system. Tank Girl is a 1995 American science fiction film directed by Rachel Talalay, based on the British post-apocalyptic comic series of the same name, created by Jamie Hewlett and written by Alan Martin. Teddy Serafian wrote the screenplay. Originally published in Deadline magazine, the film stars Lori Petty, Naomi Watts, Ice-T, and Malcolm McDowell.
Tank Girl.
What's it like knowing you're about to die?
After reading an issue of the comic Talalay had received as a gift, she obtained permission from Deadline's publisher Tom Astor to direct a film adaptation. She selected Catherine Hardwicke to be the production designer and worked closely with Martin and Hewlett during the making of the film. When Lori Petty sat down to read the script to Tank Girl, she said she found herself laughing at the photo of the character wearing a bandage and sporting a shaved head. When she went in for the audition, she dressed for the part and announced herself as Tank Girl. Even though she was a spitting image of the comic book character, studio execs weren't certain she was the one and hired well-known English actress Emily Lloyd, but her involvement was short-lived. Talalay says she fired Lloyd after she refused to cut her hair for the role and called back Petty, who was thrilled about the opportunity. Naomi Watts said she loved the script because it was so different. She went on to audition 9 times before solidifying herself as Jet Girl. The movie role opened up opportunities in America that she wouldn't have access to prior. Financially unsuccessful, the film recouped only about $6 million of its $25 million budget at the box office. Martin and Hewlett have since spoken negatively about their experiences creating the film. Talalay blames some of the film's negative reception on studio edits over which she had no control. Despite the box office failure of the film, it had been cited as an example of a comic book film with a cult following, and it's noted for its feminist themes. Writing in the 1997 book Trash Aesthetics, Popular Culture and Its Audience, Deborah Cartmel states that while the comic showed Tank Girl to be unheroic or even an accidental anti-hero, the film sets her up with classic Western generic emotional and moral justifications for her liberation and revenge on Water and Power, as she witnesses the slaughter of her boyfriend and her trusty steed. Dominique Manon writes, unlike many comic book adaptation films which feature gratuitous sexual objectification of women, Tank Girl stands out as being stridently feminist. Tank Girl's chaotic post-apocalyptic world is a mixture of Mad Max meets Clueless, fighting in a dark alley with a psychedelic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Sprinkle in some 90s alternative rock, cut the action scenes to play out like a music video on MTV when they played music videos, and you've created a cult classic. The science behind which films tap into the vein of pop culture and which films fall flat will forever be a mystery, but somehow Tank Girl has done it. Petty said her portrayal of Tank Girl had no limitations because she's a comic book character. She was anything the writers thought up and anything Petty imagined her to be. She later said her trailer was plastered with comic book artwork of Tank Girl, and she read everything she could beforehand for inspiration. I can imagine how confused audiences were when they sat down to watch this movie in 1995. At the time, there had been very few comic book adaptations to film, and without understanding the source material, the absurdity of Tank Girl was a hard pill to swallow. The film struggled with this cheesy and amateur dialogue, and the characters at the time felt too far-fetched, even for a comic book film. General audiences failed to connect with the strange kangaroo characters, and this was a few years after Turtle Power had swept the nation in 1990. Years later, I realized I may have enjoyed the movie more if it didn't push the R rating. I realized this was a huge point of contention between Kesslee and United Artists because the source material was violent and sexually explicit, but the raunchy nature of some of the scenes didn't add anything to the film, and it fell out of place. I could envision a more serious Tank Girl adaptation in today's superhero market, with movies like Deadpool and Birds of Prey, but at the time it wasn't understood. This is why Tank Girl was so ahead of its time in every way. The film's many costumes and hairstyles worked nicely to create a punk rock feel. Grounding the style of the film in the 90s is something that has solidified the film in pop culture forever. Some parts worked well, like the action sequences cut to fun 90s rock anthems. Most memorable is the scene where she steals the tank. The film's most interesting choice was to splice in so many animation sequences throughout. Where the budget didn't allow for live action, these animations stood in to create a comic book feel to the story's madness. They have a TV oddities feel to them, and it's one of the movie's most noteworthy aspects. The tank used in the film is a modified M5A1 Stuart. It was purchased from the government of Peru about 12 years before filming and had already been used in several films prior. Among numerous modifications made to Tank Girl, the tank's 37mm anti-tank gun was covered with a modified flagpole to give the appearance of a 105mm gun. An entire 1969 Cadillac Eldorado was added onto the tank, with the rear section welded at the back and the fender welded to the front. In the comics, the Rippers were considerably more kangaroo-like. However, Kesslee wanted real actors rather than stuntmen in suits playing the roles. She asked Hewlett to redesign the Rippers to make them more human, allowing them to have the actual actors' facial expressions. Requests were sent out to all major makeup and effects people, including Stan Winston, whose prior work included the Terminator films, Aliens, and Jurassic Park. Kesslee said that while she considered Winston to be the best, she did not expect to hear back from him. When she did not think that she would be able to afford his studio on her budget. A meeting was arranged and Winston insisted on being given the project, saying the Rippers would be the best characters we've had the opportunity to do. Winston's studio cut its usual price in half to meet the film's budget. 8 Rippers were featured in the film, half were given principal roles and others were mainly in the background. Each Ripper had articulated ears and tails which were activated by remote control, and in the background Rippers also had mechanical snouts which could be activated either by remote control or by the movement of the actors' mouths. Each Ripper's makeup took about 4 hours to apply. 3 technicians from Winston Studios were required to work on each Ripper's articulations during filming. No puppets or digital effects were used.
How much did they pay you to spy on us?
Gail Tattersall was chosen as the film's cinematographer. Filming took place over 16 weeks in White Sands, New Mexico, in an abandoned shopping mall in Phoenix, Arizona. Many scenes were filmed in an open pit mine, where filming had to be halted one day due to a chemical leak. New sets were often found by simply searching the mine. Principal photography was completed on September 27th of 1994, 2 days over schedule, although still within the original budget of $25 million. The end result is a film with a comedic film style that's reminiscent of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or an R-rated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I can argue the film set the tone for future sci-fi action films like The Fifth Element. The film's critically praised soundtrack was assembled by Courtney Love, who is rumored to have a cameo in the film as Subgirl before the death of her late husband Kurt Cobain. Graeme Revel composed the original music. The soundtrack album was released on March 28th of 1995 by Warner Brothers Records and Elektra Records. It peaked at number 72 on the Billboard's 200. The next week, New York Magazine wrote that the soundtrack was getting more attention than the film itself. The songs selected for the soundtrack were from alternative and grunge groups during the time of the movie's release. It's rumored Green Day was asked to contribute, but before any negotiations were solidified, they rose to fame and became too expensive. I was a little disappointed to find out the song Disconnected by Face to Face wasn't on the record. The hijack scene is one of my favorite parts of the film. Ron Hancock of Tower Records stated that sales of the album were disappointing and attributed this to the financial failure of the film. Lori Petty said that there was no formula that made Tank Girl resonate with fans all these years later, but the film was unique, new, fresh, and way ahead of its time. Malcolm McDowell said it's the kind of movie where you leave your brains at the door, go in with your bag of popcorn, and have a good time. The critical response was different. Roger Ebert gave the film 2 out of 4 stars. While praising the film's ambition, he concluded it was hard to care about it for as long as its manic energy wore him down. In September of 2019, a Tank Girl reboot movie was reported to be in development with Margot Robbie's production company Lucky Chap Entertainment, who optioned rights from MGM. I wouldn't imagine anyone better than Robbie to give us a modern version of the film. We'll have to wait and see what the future holds for Tank Girl. Way ahead of its time, Tank Girl may have failed because general audiences weren't ready for a female character this manic and colorful. Petty's film and depiction of Tank Girl was uniquely absurd and made for a fun movie experience, paving the way for a future psychotic film character we all know and love, Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. Tank Girl miraculously slipped into the 90s pop culture scene and quickly became a cult classic. Unfortunately, its silly plot, lack of character development, and disconnected story structure contributed to its poor reception. Tilely's fight to stay true to Tank Girl's rich source material was a worthy cause, but Universal's clueless movie execs ultimately hurt the film's potential. The soundtrack is a hefty slice of 90s nostalgia and goes a long way in re-experiencing the film, placing Tank Girl into film history as a unique blend of pop culture and an inspiring steampunk adaptation of a well-loved comic. Decades later, Tank Girl was lost amongst similar film adaptations that missed the mark, like Judge Dredd, Batman and Robin, Barbed Wire, and the Super Mario Bros. Because of the film's fun costumes, Stan Winston's fabulous creature design, music video style action sequences, both live action and animation, I want to give this film a higher rating than it actually deserves. But I won't. For these reasons, I give Tank Girl a C-. Thank you for participating, and please stay tuned for more sci-fi movie reviews. Until then, drop me a comment below and tell me why you love or hate Tank Girl. What's your favorite part of this cult classic? As always, like, comment, and subscribe, because this transmission may be the only one you hear from space.